Welcome to the Rusted Garden. Today I'm going to show you how to build a raised bed. We're just going to do the framing and really build a 4-foot by 8-foot raised bed. The beds that I have in there are 4 feet by 6 feet, so I recommend that your first bed that you build is a 4-foot bed by 8 feet. It's not that much more expensive and it gives you some more growing room. But you can make any size raised bed that you want. You can do a 4-foot by 4 foot, 4-foot by 6 foot, 4-foot by 8 foot, and the key is 4 feet wide. And the reason for that is your arms are 2 feet long, so if you build a raised bed that's 4 feet wide, you can get around the bed, reach in, take care of it, and your arms will be able to reach, your hands will be able to reach any part of your garden. You never have to step in a raised bed, therefore you don't compact the soil. So one of the benefits is you can grow more vegetables in a raised bed space because the soil stays nice and loose. Let's get to the supplies first. So lumber nowadays is pressure treated with copper. Copper won't harm you, won't harm your vegetables. You can use it. It's been like that for 20 years. Years ago it used to be arsenic. That could have been a problem. Now it's copper. So go ahead and use pressure treated wood. Pressure treated wood will last 10 to 15 years in your garden and cost out over a 10-year period. That's pretty inexpensive. So let's start with the boards here. These are 2 by 8 by 8s. They are $7.98. To build a 4-foot by 8-foot raised bed, you need 3 of them. You need 1, 2 8-foot pieces for your sides, and then you have to get another 8-foot piece and cut it in half, and that will build your 4-foot by 8-foot bed. And Home Depot and Lowe's will cut the wood for you, so you don't even need to do any sawing or cutting or anything like that. And again, they're $7.98, so that'll cost you about $24 to build a 4-foot by 8-foot raised bed, and it will last 10 to 15 years if you use pressure treated wood. I'm also going to build a couple 2 by 6 by 8s, and those boards cost $5.87, and again, you'll need 3. You will need an 8-foot board for each side, and then one board cut in half, just like the other one, and you'll have your 4 by 8. The difference is the sides, one is 6 inches, one is 8 inches. I'll talk more about the sides and why you may vary those. The other thing you will need to buy are screws. You want 3-inch screws because they have to sink in a good inch to get through the board that's on the side, and you really want about 2 inches in there. This way your boards don't split or twist or anything like that. So you want a 3-inch screw. You'll need a drill and you'll need a drill bit. You want a drill bit that is smaller than the width of the screw, and you pre-drill 1, 2, 3 holes. And the reason you do that is then you can put the screw in there and it's not going to split your wood. And a lot of the deck screws you buy have a screw bit that comes with it, so you don't even need to buy that. So look for that. This brand is Deckmate. It's as good as anyone out there. So let me get to setting this up and we'll start with the build. So in the 8-inch boards, 8 inches across this way, you want to put in 3 holes. And you want to pre-drill again, 1, because pressure treated wood is very difficult to put a screw through. And you also don't want to put a screw in and then it splits the wood. 3 holes for an 8-inch piece, 2 holes for the 6-inch piece, and that's plenty to keep the boards from warping and twisting. You do want to make sure that you put the hole in the right place. You can see that the board is a width of probably about 1 inch. So the way you set it up is to really look at the width right here. So that board would be straight just like that. So you want to make sure you put the hole in the board with the drill so that it goes right into the middle of this board. And that's how you set the boards up. You drill into the 4-foot pieces, so it's 3 screw holes or drill holes on each side, 2 for the 6, 3 for the 8. Now this can certainly be done with one person, but if you have another person help you out, it makes it a little bit easier. Before you put the boards together in the corners, pre-sink the screws. It makes it a lot easier. Just put them in just enough so they don't fall out. And then you're going to start with the top screw. You want it to be flush right here and right here. And because we're just putting in 1 screw, we'll have some wiggle room to make sure it's flush when we get to the bottom screw. flush. Close as you can, and then you have the wiggle room like this to make sure it's flush down at the bottom. Put in the bottom screw and then the middle screw, and you are on your way to setting up your raised bed frame. The 4x8's been framed together, and again you want to make sure it's flush across the top, flush down the side, and start with the screw up top here, and then sink the screw down at the bottom and then move to the middle. And it is flush, but a lot of times these boards are a little bit warped, so if there's some gaps or twisting, don't worry about it. You just want to get your frame together. Now, in future videos, I'll talk to you about how you set the soil up, how you put in fertilizer, what you can grow in there. But you will drop this where you want it to go, remove the grass. You want to loosen the soil down 10 to 12 inches, and then you would put your amendments on top and mix it together. If you're dropping this now in the fall, you're not going to grow anything. You can put the frame where you want, put down some nice thick newspaper across the grass, put some dirt on top, and just let it sit over winter. The grass will die off, and then you can, make your amendments to your raised bed come spring, and I will show you how to do that. So a couple of things. Raised beds are wonderful for concentrating your resources right into a space that you're not going to walk in. That will save you money. Everything that you buy will go into where plants are growing. The soil will also stay nice and loose because you don't have to walk in it. You can get your arm reach around and take care of it. So you can pack in more plants in a raised bed because they compete a little bit less when the soil's not compact, because they got all this great room, roots develop, the plants do really well. Now for the sides of your beds, this is a 4x8x8. You can see it's a little bit taller than the 6-inch boards. Any raised bed is great for planting early because the soil is above the ground. It drains quickly, it warms more quickly, and you can get your spring crops in more quickly, of course. I use a 6-inch frame a lot for come spring in my area so that I can just get out, get my lettuces in, my different greens in, and get going. The 8-inch sides are great if you want to grow 6-inch carrots because you can make a really nice loose soil. The taproot of the carrot will go straight down and you're not going to get all that curving. And it really depends on what you want to grow. But I do recommend at least a 6-inch side. 8 inches is perfect, straight back there. I have an 8-inch side raised bed behind those black containers. Now these beds that I'm building today are going to replace this area right in here. And if you want to subscribe to my channel, I do weekly videos. I will show you how I transform this area with the new raised beds. I will also show you how I fill them, the different amendments I use, how I fertilize them. But I'm not going to do them all in one video. It'll be like 50 minutes long. So I'm going to take this 4x6 raised bed, and remember, you always want it to be 4 feet wide. It could be a 4x4, 4x6, 4x8, just so that your hands and arms can get in there and take care of the garden. This frame, 6 inches ago, is going to be put on this frame is 6 inches. So this will be a 12-inch raised bed in here. I'm going to really use a lot of coco coir, peat moss, loosen up the soil, and plant carrots in there. And hopefully I get nice straight carrots. Because I have clay soil, they twist a lot. An 8-bed, a 4-foot by 8-foot raised bed will be dropped in here. It's going to give me an extra 2 feet, which will allow me to plant a lot more. And this whole area is slowly going to be transformed. A lot of these plants are still viable, but the cold weather's coming, so I'm just going to pull them out and start getting ready for next spring. Now, the benefit of a raised bed is that we can put all the resources right inside the 4x8 frame. Saves us some money. We don't need to walk in this. You always want a raised bed to be 4 feet wide, so when you walk around it, you can reach in with your arms. Your arms about 2 feet. So you never have to walk in here, and you can really plant vegetables more closely together because the soil doesn't get compressed once you set it up. We're going to set this up with coco coir. That's the brick right in front there. That's a 5-kilogram brick, about 11 pounds, and that'll cost $19 to $22 depending on where you buy it. The pH of that is around 6. pH value is important because you don't want something that's too acidic. It will affect how some of your plants grow. Peat moss I've been using for years. That's a 3 cubic foot bale. The pH level of that is somewhere between 5.5 and 6 depending on where you're getting your peat moss from. We can throw in lime if we wanted. If we were going to use predominantly peat moss throughout here, we would have to put in some lime just to raise the pH so it's less acidic. The leaf-gro bag is about $4.50. It's bought locally here in Maryland, and the pH for that is around 7. It's very neutral, and I got that really from the manufacturer, contacting them. So by mixing all three of these together, mixing them in with my soil, I'm not going to really have any issue with the pH. But you may choose to go more with coco coir. One of the things with coco coir is you have to be careful that you're not getting a product that has a lot of sodium in it. So you want to check out the company or buy a low sodium product. You don't want sodium or salt in your coco coir. People like that because it's more renewable. Peat moss has a higher acidity, so if you're using a lot of that, I use a lot of it, you do have to throw in lime. If I was just going to use peat moss to fill all this, I would be also showing you how to add lime to it, but it's just throwing a couple handfuls and it helps neutralize the acidity. Sometimes people don't like that because they don't feel that it's renewable. Depending on where you buy your peat moss, they manage the bogs differently. So if you're buying from a company that kind of follows forestry, and when they take from one part of the peat bog, they replace it, they fix it, and then 20-30 years later that's viable again, something along that line. But you can look into the different peat moss companies and see how they harvest their peat moss. leaf-gro is only available, this brand, in my area in Maryland, and it's wonderful. It's just leaf product, all organic, and it's inexpensive, and it's really going to be my go-to amendment for my beds. Now, if you have lots of compost, certainly use your compost, mix it into here, really make it healthy. Also going to show you how to use organic fertilizers to set it up, and we'll basically just be putting it in the first layer, kind of what you see now, mixing it in, then we put in the amendments, and then we put in some more organic fertilizer. Try and stay around a 5-5-5 organic fertilizer. Nowadays, it's kind of crazy. The same company may have 10 different products, and it might be like a 5-5-5 NPK, a 6-4-7 NPK, 3-7-1 NPK. It's just crazy. I don't know why they do that. I think it's just to get our money. Just get as close as you can to a 5-5-5. Vegetables don't care that much about variances in the N, P, and K, at least not at that level. So let's start with the coco coir brick. It has to be dropped into water. It's going to take about 30 minutes for it to absorb, and it's going to create about 2 cubic feet. And you can see the coir brick is compressed and layered, and we basically have to drop it into water. So you'll need a container about that size, fill it halfway up with water. Don't worry if you have too much water, you're putting it right into your garden bed anyway. It's completely dry, so when you put it in, it's actually going to float. So if you're using something that's more shredded, you may actually have to get your hand in there, move it around, and just get it done. For the brick, you drop it in, let it float for a while. It'll probably take about a half an hour. Every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, come in and just scrape off the excess that has moisture in it, and this way it can penetrate down to the rest of the brick. You know, and depending on how it's compressed, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, you'll have your coco coir ready for the garden. We're going to put in an organic fertilizer, and generally speaking, most organic fertilizers are 1 to 2 tablespoons per foot. In a 4x8 raised bed, that's 4 times 8, 32 square feet. That means you have 32 1-foot sections in there. And I usually also think in the way of a cube. So we're going to go 1 foot by 1 foot, and then 1 foot down, that's a cube, and we're going to put 2 tablespoons in. If we were kind of going to fertilize down 24 inches, we would have to use more, but this is basically a 1 by 1 by 1 cube. So what does that all mean? So 2 tablespoons per cubic foot. That means I'm going to need 64 tablespoons. It'd be really a pain to do 64 tablespoons, so just go on Google and convert tablespoons to ounces and do 64 tablespoons to ounces. It'll tell you how much, and you can just measure it out into a cup and then evenly spread it throughout your garden. Now, when we do it, we're going to do it just like this. We're going to spread out what already exists, put the fertilizer down, then we're going to put the amendments on top, and then we're going to mix it all together, and we get that nice 1 foot mix. So let me get to that. So I put the fertilizer down, also cleared out the onions that were right here. I'm going to put them back into the space. I decided to go with 1.5 tablespoons per square foot, so that was 48 tablespoons, and I just went and calculated how much that was in ounces. put it in a cup and sprinkled it evenly across here. And you don't need to be perfect with it, so just decide if you want to do 1 to 2 tablespoons. Now, if you have a lot of compost and really good broken down organic matter that you're using in your yard, certainly put it in here. That's a lot better than organic fertilizers. One thing I want to mention is my raised bed slopes from the left of the screen to the right just a little bit, so that's what I wanted. You want to get a level, and when the dot is between the 2 lines there, you know that you're level across this way. So I always level off the 4 feet portion of my raised bed, and you want to do that now before you put all the earth in there, because what you have to do is basically get, you know, a little hand shovel there and dig in under the wood in different areas until you get it level, and then you're ready to go. So I'm gonna level this out, put in the amendments. Let me show you the coco coir. It actually only took 15 minutes, and when you do it, you're like, man, that was way too much water, but look at it now. So this is what you get from a 5 kilogram 11-pound brick of coco coir, and in theory, let's see visually, we need about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 8 bricks of coco coir, 5 kilograms, 11 pounds, to fill up this whole raised bed and mix it together. You don't necessarily have to do that. You could if you wanted to. You probably would need 6 bales of peat moss and probably 8 of the leaf-gro. But go ahead and mix it up. You can do it however you want. And again, if you have compost, add in a lot of compost. And the other thing that you can do is when you're filling your raised beds, if you have some containers, like that one that maybe has 2-year-old container soil in there, go ahead and dump it into your raised beds. It will be great for the raised bed, and then you can go ahead and put new container mix into your containers at the start of the season next spring. So let me show you how I laid the amendments down. The order does not matter, and this isn't something you have to do exactly as I did. It's just to give you an idea of how you may fill your raised bed, and this is really the least expensive way versus taking dirt from your yard and putting it in there and using your own compost. If you can do that, great. But if you have to go out and buy products, you don't need to go and buy the bags for raised bed soil. You don't need to use potting mix. They all cost more and basically have these ingredients in there in some capacity. First layer's coco coir, that's what it looks like. So that 5 kilogram, 11-pound brick covered a 4 by 8 foot space to about that depth. That was a 3 cubic foot bale of peat moss, and I've used some of it, so it wasn't a full bale, but it's going to, you know, fill a good portion of the raised bed with maybe about an inch or so of the peat moss. And then this is only 1 bag of leaf-gro, and I would put that on top. And I'm going to have to come back and put in 1 bag, 2 bags, 3 more bags of leaf-gro, and that will be enough to really raise my soil level. I'll also throw in some container stuff. Now, if you're worried about the pH, best time to test it is next spring before you plant. Let this all break down. Test your soil. If it needs lime or something, or you need to adjust the pH, do it in the spring. Because we just added all these amendments, the measurements just aren't going to be right. Let them get a couple of months of just kind of working together and neutralizing each other, doing whatever they're going to do. Also for feeding, we just put in a basic amount of organic fertilizer to kind of just get this started. Again, the organic fertilizer is usually in an insoluble form. It's going to have to break down over the months. And as the microbes break it down over the months, it basically changes the N, P, and K into a form, a soluble form, where the plant roots, when mixed with water, can absorb the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium into the root system. And that's just to kind of get this set up. If you were planting bigger plants in here, in the planting hole, you may fertilize differently, you may add in more, but you can do that as you wish. This is just the setup that I use in the fall to get my beds ready for the spring. Now, it's also time for cool weather crops, so I'm going to plant in here radishes, lettuces, and different greens, and I'll show you that in a different video. I want to just give you a tip. Pretend this is your larger spade. So you're going to go down about 6 inches, turn it over. That's one mix. Turn it over again, and you're really turning each section over to mix up the number of amendments you have well into the soil. Then you go back and you really go down 12 inches and you mix your earth that was there to start in with your amendments, and that's how you get a good mix throughout your bed. So it takes a little bit of work, but don't leave it in layers. You don't want that to happen. You don't want your amendments to sit on top of your soil, or it creates this weird barrier that fills up with water and it's just not good for the plants. You want to mix your amendments together right in there, and then you want to mix all that into the depth of your soil, and that will get you ready. So I was actually going to end the video right there, but I wanted to show you what I've done. I put the onions back in, mixed everything well through, and if I was going to let this bed sit till next spring, I would go ahead and put in the organic fertilizer right on top like we did in the beginning of the video. Put in another layer of fertilizer here, mix it into the top 6 to 12 inches. But since I'm going to be planting, the left side over there by the shovel is going to get radishes. Could do that video right after this one actually. They don't like a lot of fertilizer, so I didn't want to put any more in there. And then I'm going to be putting in leafy greens, lettuces, and I'm going to use water-soluble fertilizer for them. So I didn't want to add any extra fertilizer. But if I was going to let this kind of sleep through winter and plant again in the spring and not put anything in there now, I would go ahead and put in another layer of organic fertilizer. And again, if you have compost, use that. It's so much better. Also started a series on mental wellness, mental health, and vegetable gardening. I'll put the link right here and in the description if you want to follow that. And if you're interested in something that can really help your life out, and that's gardening, or it could help one of your friends out or your family members out, please subscribe, because I'm going to be doing mental health and wellness videos really over the next year every month. It's the fall, mid-September here in Maryland Zone 7, and you can grow the cool weather crops in the spring and in the fall. And cool weather crops are basically plants that enjoy 50, 60 degree nights, 70 degree days, and what we're planting today are radishes. They love the cool weather. They really thrive in really 50, 60 degree weather. And we're going to transplant a bunch of different greens into the bed. These transplants are about 2 weeks old. This is a perfect way to grow greens and get them ready for the bed. For instance, I just shot a video about 2 hours ago on filling this raised bed, and it had other plants in there. So while I'm waiting for these plants to be pulled out of here to set up this raised bed, I go ahead and start these about 2 weeks ago, so I have nice transplants to put in, and I'll show you how to do that. But we're going to get into cool weather greens, and we're going to get into radishes. The radish I'm planting today is the Roxanne. It's a past All-America Selections winner. It's a wonderful radish. After germination, it takes 21 days to be ready for your table. And when I grew these before, they've just been really magnificent. Nice, round, red radishes that the whole crop really produced. Now, when you plant radishes, you want to plant them into a nice, loose soil. And I'll link the video on how I set up this raised bed. It'll give you some idea. You also don't want to over-fertilize your radishes. You give them too much nitrogen, they're going to get too much leafy green. So I'm not going to add any fertilizer to this. There was fertilizer put in when I mixed this bed together, but it was an organic, insoluble fertilizer, and it's not really going to be ready till later in the season. So this area is not over-fertilized. The Roxanne radish wants to be planted about a ½ an inch deep, 1 inch apart. So I already went in and I put in holes with my finger, ½ an inch deep. There are 77 holes here. So one tip is, that's a lot of radishes. So if I went in and did the other side right now, when they mature, I'm going to have, almost 100 and, well, actually over 150 radishes. That's too many to eat. So plant a portion of them, wait a week, and then plant the next batch. And this way they kind of roll in over a couple weeks period and you don't get them all at once. And I don't know if you can see in there, but I put 2 radishes per hole, ½ an inch deep, 1 inch apart, 77 radishes, and this is plenty of space for the Roxanne. Now if I'm growing my German Giants, I'm giving them 4 inches of space. French Breakfast, 1 inch of space. Other radishes, maybe 2 inches. So just kind of check out your variety, and if you're not sure, do 2 inches of space, and that's plenty of room. You don't want to pack them too close together or the radishes won't form. So this is set. I'll water them in, and a week or 2 later I'll plant the rest of the radishes. Now for the seed starts, in some cases I just put in, or actually I put in more than 1 seed, but I thinned them to 1 plant. So where there's 1 seedling and I want to grow this to a full size, these will get planted 4 to 6 inches apart. Where I'm growing more for the greens, they'll get planted 2 to 4 inches apart. And the difference being is these are all loose leaf lettuces, and I'm going to harvest the leaves, so I'm not really concerned about getting them to full size. Let me get these in the ground and I'll talk more about them. So really in about 5 minutes I got these planted already. And I sell all these on my seed shop, www.therusticgarden.com. But this is a Chinese cabbage. We're going 6 inches apart because I want these to get to full size. That's an endive back there. Again, 6 inches apart. I want them to get larger. And then this is bok choy, 5 plants right over here. And again, 6 inches apart so that they get to full size. Right in there I planted some blood beets. We're not growing beets, we're just growing the leaves, so it's fine that a lot of plants are packed into that area. Okay, let's get over to the other side, but you can see how quickly you can get stuff in the ground if you start transplants. So the bed's already filled up with the transplants, and again, it's about 14 days from germination in the seed cells. You don't want to go much past that because you'll end up with dwarfed plants. So back there is my giant noble spinach, about 6 inches apart. 1 or 2 plants, I'm going to grow them to full size. That's deer tongue. 3 plants right in there, grow them to full size. Then I come into this space. I have prize head lettuce, salad bowl red, red romaine, a selway, and that whole spacing there is just going to be for leaf cutting. I'm not trying to grow these to full size, and that will just allow me to come out here, cut the leaves off, leave the roots in the ground, and they will grow more leaves, and that's called cut and come again lettuce. As we come back this way, go back to the spacing that's about 6 to 8 inches apart. That's a Batavian endive. They need space, and it's an absolutely delicious green. Mustard greens right in here. They need space, 6 to 8 inches. They get extremely large. And you can experiment with the different greens you like to grow, see how much space they need. In a raised bed, they can be packed a little bit more closely together because the soil stays loose. The soil doesn't get compact. In here I have Royal Oak, Grand Rapids, and again enough spacing for them to get larger. And that's some Tokyo bunching or Tokyo long white onions. Plenty of greens. Now I'm going to show you how to take care of these for slugs and snails. When I filled this bed today, I found massive sized snails and slugs. They need to be treated. And we're going to use iron phosphate, and also I have rabbits in here, so if I don't cover these and take care of them, a rabbit will get in here and just shear them down. I'll show you how I do that also. And here are some great ways to protect your greens from rabbits. These are racks from my greenhouses, you know, the ones that you buy that you can put up and down. And over the years the plastic tends to dry out and crack and warp, but I save the wire shelving so I can do this. And all you really want to do is drop it over the area and then just kind of guide your plants through the spacing. Rabbits spook easily. They don't want to walk on that. Their paws get stuck in there, or their, I don't know if their paws or legs or whatever they are, get stuck in there, and they'll leave them alone. If you have a rabbit that's a little more aggressive, you could put some chicken wire on top of this, and if you don't have the racks, just use chicken wire. They don't want to crawl under anything because they'll feel like they're going to get trapped. They're not going to crawl on this again. Their feet will get stuck in there, so they'll leave it alone. The other thing that will come are slugs. I haven't treated since the spring really and into the beginning of the summer for snails and slugs. Iron phosphate works wonders. Just sprinkle it down. It'll look something like that. Don't over sprinkle it, and then send it throughout your garden. This will kill off whatever current slugs and snails are living so they don't overwinter, and in about 2-3 days the iron phosphate gets digested, shuts down their digestive system, and they die, and they'll leave your greens alone. Please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to do growth videos on here. Check out Instagram. I'll also do pictures, giveaways, and updates on how these are growing. Check out my blog at www.therusticgarden.com. Thanks.